Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. After the first Hunger Games, the original Hunger Games, which are the 74th annual Hunger Games, Katniss and Peeta have been living in luxury because they have all this money that you get when you win the Hunger Games. They are sent on a tour and find out that there's kind of a revolution going on because of what Katniss did in the first Hunger Games, and so she's seeing the effects of that, and because the evil government in this dystopian future go out and want her taken out, they decide to make the 75th annual Hunger Games a collection of the previous winners of the Hunger Games, kind of like a real-world road rules challenge, but for the Hunger Games. Peeta and Katniss have to go back into the Hunger Games, the hell they thought they had escaped, even though they both have PTSD, and they have to make alliances and fight their way out yet again, going into an even crazier Hunger Games than last time. The thing with the Hunger Games, for me, is that I'm fairly indifferent about it. I was not a fan of the last one, and I don't know if this changes my indifference too much, but I think this is a much better movie than the last one. That's probably because Francis Lawrence has more experience with action than Gary Ross, the guy who directed the original Hunger Games. It's a huge improvement, especially the actual Hunger Games this time was way more thrilling. The cinematography was much better. There are a couple really beautiful shots in this that I was surprised that I was really seeing that in the Hunger Games. But it's not amazing cinematography most of the time. One of my biggest problems with the beginning of the film was that it doesn't really understand how it's telling its story, and I feel like the audience is okay with however it tells the story, but doesn't seem to really have a central theory behind how it's making this film. Most mainstream films, when they don't have a theory about them, kind of fall to pieces, and this film seems to be able to keep going. It still made me kind of get semi-involved, even though it didn't have a theory towards it, which I think is kind of remarkable because most of the time it just falls apart. The interesting thing about the Hunger Games movies versus other franchises, major franchises going on, I have very little connection to any of these characters, and this is the second one I've seen so far. And I was thinking versus like the Harry Potter or the Marvel movies, and the reason I have a connection to those people isn't because I had read the Harry Potter books. I actually stopped reading Harry Potter books, or the Marvel movies. I don't love every single one of them, but I always feel, even in the Iron Man sequels, I have a connection to Tony Stark. And that's because they cared a lot about certain characters. It let you have almost a relationship with those characters. And I never got that as much in Hunger Games. Apparently in the book, it's all from Katniss's perspective. So I guess if I had read the book, I would have like kind of a better relationship with her as a character. And it's really more focused on telling the story and not introducing you to a character. I feel like my relationship to her and all the other Hunger Games characters is kind of empty because I'm not really spending time with them. I think Jennifer Lawrence does that job, and does that job very well. She's a great actress. I actually think it's probably one of my favorite real movie stars going on right now. I'll probably see her in anything. But I think I like her the least of all her roles. Well, I mean, aside from like House at the End of the Street, but whatever, is in this film, in the Hunger Games, because I don't feel like it shows what she can really do. That's always the complaint about bigger movies, is actors don't really get to act as much. But she's such a strong actress that she really, conveys a lot of emotions that the filmmaking isn't expressing, the dialogue isn't expressing, and it takes a very skilled actor to really show that. I think she does a lot of the job that the filmmaker should be doing in this film. If they gave her a film where it's just like you could have developed Katniss as a character and then went into more of the plot, I think she would really shine. This movie would possibly be even bigger, because when you have a relationship with the audience, that's when you have these huge connections. The only one I really care about in this film is Katniss. It often has the problem that most mainstream movies do, where they rush an action sequence that's really supposed to have a lot more resonance so it can move on with the story. It almost feels like this film is more interested in plot than having the story mean something to the audience, which is pretty important in storytelling. When you think about moments that scared you or shocked you, it's because the filmmakers or the storyteller cared about having that moment resonate with you. And there are certain moments that I think work really well, but because it's more of a plot movie than a story movie, you're left to have the actors do that for you. And if the filmmaking had been to that level, I think it would have worked a lot better. It's just got way too many characters, and it feels like hampered down by a lot of what it's trying to tell. I feel like every time I see a Hunger Games movie, anyone who's read the book needs to explain way too much to me. A movie like Ender's Game was a lot worse about that than this film is. It did kind of do a lot of what bigger sequel does, and especially like Wrath of Khan's the best example of when you look at what was wrong with the first film and you kind of try to improve upon it. And I think this film does a lot of that, and definitely shows a better future for the rest of the Hunger Games. And they showed that these will definitely get better, but are they that much better? Like, I don't know if I have been really won over by the Hunger Games. I feel like a lot of this is still, unfortunately, like subject matter over how the story is being told. And, you know, I don't think anyone's going to talk about how genius the Hunger Games, the films were, or even the writing or the directing. Its motivation is to tell the plot. And I wish this film was maybe directed in such a way that you'd have more about the character. These films, there's lost opportunities. You know, the satire is really weak, but it's clearly kind of there. Like, what's with the reality TV thing? It doesn't feel like very biting satire. It just feels very general. This dystopian world is all over the place culturally. Like, why does it look like the 30s? Like, what are we trying to say with it? It's trying to be style over substance, but trying to have substance, but it's so kind of unclear. I'm not sure where it's going with it. They don't entirely screw anything up, but they don't entirely nail anything. The acting is a little more straightforward and has more of a theory to it than I think the directing and the writing. I just wish it had been a lot more clear, but none of these films they're all right. I don't totally hate them, but I'm still indifferent towards them. I don't think this is like great storytelling. I just think this is a big movie that for some reason people have built up and made into something, and I think that's more because of the subject matter that people are infatuated with. It's not really about, you know, that these are great movies. I think I will probably continue to be indifferent to it, but I have more of a glimmer of hope from this one than I did from the last one. So if you have seen The Hunger Games Catching Fire and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.